13 News at 5 starts right now.
Forced out of their homes by Ernesto.
The feeling of being displaced is the most disheartening feeling that you could ever have.
I'm Regina Mobley. Tonight on 13 News at 5, cleaning up City Line apartments. Hear from residents who are returning home, plus why others fear for their future.
A naval officer accused of espionage. I'm Sandra Parker. Tonight, the arraignment for Petty Officer 3rd Class Andy Weinman. Plus, military reporter Mike Goody breaks down the charges facing the suspect.
Watching some Atlantic activity again. I'm Chief Meteorologist Jeff Lawson tracking Tropical Storm Florence. Coming up, I'll have the latest track for the storm and if Hampton Roads has a reason to celebrate or fear Florence.
It is Wednesday night, and the big story on 13 News, dozens of people head home after their apartments were temporarily condemned because of Ernesto. Good evening, everyone.
Today, the City of Newport News gave the okay for some City Line residents to go home. They were forced to flee from their apartments on Friday morning during the height of the storm. Since then, crews have been working to make sure the building is safe for residents. But even today, some people don't know what's in the future for their homes. 13 News Peninsula Bureau Chief Velma Scaife is live in Newport News with the latest.
Well, with the exception of maybe 6 units, tenants who live in the upstairs apartments, all of them have been able to return home. As for the residents who live in the downstairs apartments, well, they too will be able to return home one day. The question is when, and a lot of it will depend on how soon contractors can get the job done. As the upstairs tenants were returning to their apartments, some residents in the downstairs units were moving their belongings to portable storage sheds so contractors could get to work.
It's a lot of work that's got to be done, you know, for the people downstairs, but all in all, it's going. The tile, carpet, and sheetrock all need to be replaced, and air conditioning units checked out. Something else that's going to be checked out and reviewed is the emergency response plan the city has for the development. The report was put together 3 years ago, so the city departments that would play a part in evacuating residents or determining when it's safe for them to return would have everything spelled out in black and white.
I know the drill, so I know when it's rain, look out.
In the segment outlining the responsibilities of management at City Line Apartments, the plan calls for management to monitor flood conditions, and when there's water standing in the streets or parking lots, alert residents of a possible evacuation. When the water level overtakes the curbs, management is supposed to call the Emergency Communications Center so residents who need to be evacuated can be moved before the water gets into their apartments.
Ideally, we'd like to get them out before the waters get up into the apartments, and so that's something we're going to be looking at to see if we can better improve some communications in that area.
Now, I'm told that the city officials hope to be able to meet with management here at City Line Apartments in the next few weeks. They want to go over this emergency response plan to see what needs to be changed or re-emphasized or added. Reported live for Newport News, Velma Scaife, 13 News.
Well, Tropical Storm Ernesto has also left a lasting mark on residents in North Carolina. Mother Nature served up a 1-2 punch for people in Elizabeth City. Several inches of rain fell there when the cold front moved through last week. Then came Ernesto. And in one neighborhood, there are extra concerns because they're afraid that nature will someday repeat itself. 13 News reporter Patrick Terpstra got a look at the damage in the Oxford Heights neighborhood. And Patrick, what's the story?
Well, Sandra, we're in one of those houses now that has so much damage, and so many homes here did not have flood insurance. You can see what people are dealing with, buckling floors here and walls. Now all people can do is wait on FEMA.
So all this has got to come out because, well, it's still damp.
Never in 33 years of living here did John Kreider see so much flood water.
And it was right on through my house. I mean, there was no stopping it.
Kreider lives in the Oxford Heights subdivision of Elizabeth City. They are used to minimal flooding on the ground. Here's the problem. Oxford Heights is surrounded by swampland. You can see the water over there. After a normal storm, the water will usually come up about 1 foot, about to here. But after Ernesto, it came up all the way here. You can see the line, almost up to my shoulders. So what was different this time? Kreider is convinced it's unchecked development, eliminating floodplains and funneling water to these backyards.
The city planning has done the whole thing. They don't look at the floodplain. We've got maps of it, and they just don't look at it.
But the emergency management coordinator says the city has required developers to build retention ponds. She says the community is in a flood zone and that the 12 inches of rain from Ernesto is rare, really rare.
It obviously got hit hard, but we're getting reports in from all over Pasquotank County.
Few here have flood insurance coverage. 86-year-old Bessie Chappell lived here 40 years and never thought she'd need insurance. She also never imagined needing to be rescued from her flooded home by the National Guard. Now she's trying to figure out how or even if to make repairs.
I'm living from day to day. Really, I'm telling you the truth, day to day.
And FEMA workers are canvassing the area right now, deciding whether or not to dole out checks. Reporting live in Elizabeth City, Patrick Terpstra, 13 News.
Okay, some good news. Dominion Power reports that less than 100 customers are without power in the entire 13 News viewing area. Still, the Ernesto cleanup continues. So far, the state is sticking with a preliminary estimate of damage to be about $90 million. 6 people died in Virginia and 9 people total for the U.S. Tens of thousands of people in New York and New England are still waiting for electricity to be restored.
Up next in hurricane season, keeping track of Florence. Chief Meteorologist Jeff Lawson just got the latest advisory on Tropical Storm Florence. So Jeff, how's the track looking right now?
Well, right now, if it holds to form, it is going to miss us to the east. But again, I need to emphasize, remember what happened with Ernesto? It ended up within the cone, but it was way, way, way over on the very edge, many hundreds of miles different where it went and where it was supposed to go, at least in terms of down the middle of the track. So yes, the cone, got to just remember, we can't focus on the middle of it because it always doesn't head right down the middle of that path. Here it is, still organizing out in the central Atlantic. I mentioned yesterday, typically a storm in this location would curve and miss us most of the time, almost all the time, in fact, but not necessarily every time. 19.0 north, 51.4 west. That's just about 1,800 miles, give or take a few, from Hampton Roads. Expected to strengthen into a major hurricane, and eventually, as it gets relatively close to the U.S., sort of west of Bermuda a little bit, make that turn from an approaching cold front. Now again, have to point out, Ernesto was supposed to make a lot of turns that it never did. So remember, if it takes more of a path here along the southern end of the cone, it could conceivably take a run at the beach. That is not likely. I just want to point that out. Right now the thinking is it'll stay offshore. History's on our side with systems like this, and that's what I think it'll do, but we still need to be vigilant, and I'll have a lot more over the next couple of days. For now, though, that is the latest, live from the 13 News Weather Lab.
Other news now in a developing story at Norfolk Naval Station. The arraignment for a sailor accused of espionage has just wrapped up. Petty Officer 3rd Class Ariel Andy Weinman is accused of taking a Navy laptop with classified information and selling its contents to a foreign government. Today, Weinman is learning more about the charges against him. 13 News military reporter Mike Gooding is live at Naval Station Norfolk with late-breaking developments. Mike.
Well, hi, Regina. No plea agreement was entered here today by this defendant. He was in the courtroom for about 45 minutes and essentially sat and observed as we did, as both sides, the prosecution and the defense attorneys, basically dickered over a number of legal matters. We can tell you, though, that a trial date has now formally been set for November 13th. In the super secret world of Navy submarines, fire control technician 3rd Class Ariel Weinman was pretty low in the command food chain. Still, he stands accused of violating 6 counts of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, including 3 counts of espionage. The former USS Albuquerque sailor is charged with taking a laptop computer and peddling its classified contents to an unnamed foreign government before destroying it. If convicted, he faces life in prison. The Navy has not said what country Weinman was allegedly spying for, nor what, if anything, he was paid. His newly appointed civilian attorney says the accused is holding up well.
You know, I guess he would be, have as high a morale as anyone that's locked in pretrial confinement. But he's able to articulate, to me, and the more I get to know him, the more I could tell you. But right now, today's the first day that I met him in person, and so far all we've had is telephone calls.
Now, even though Weinman's former submarine, the USS Albuquerque, is based in New London, Connecticut, he's being held in the brig here, and his trial theoretically would take place here. because the Norfolk-based Fleet Forces Command is the convening authority in any of these types of cases that specifically involve national security. The defense attorney says it may ask for a continuance of that November 13th trial date, and because of all the immediate media attention that this case has received, he may also ask for a change of venue. Reporting live in Norfolk, Mike Gooding, 13 News.
We have a 13 News update on the suspect in the shootings of 2 Mormon missionaries in Chesapeake. A judge has decided to keep the trial in the same city where that crime was committed. 19-year-old James Boughton is accused of killing 21-year-old Morgan Young and shooting 19-year-old Joshua Hydebrink on a Chesapeake street back in January. Police have said Boughton thought the men had witnessed a shooting as they preached door to door, while attorneys had cited the media publicity to get a change of venue for that trial, but the judge said no. Boughton will go on trial next month.
A fire inside a Chesapeake High School cafeteria caused a few minor issues for the second day of school. A fire inside Indian River High School's kitchen caught fire this morning around 7:45. The custodial staff put it out before the fire department arrived. The school was evacuated since there were some people inside the building at the time, but no one was hurt. Boxed lunches and pizza were served for lunch. The fryer should be replaced by tomorrow. There's much more to come on this Wednesday night edition of 13 News.
They caused a commotion at MacArthur Mall last week. They even had their car blown open by the bomb squad. Find out why the 2 people who drove the car were allowed to get out of jail.
Plus, an intense search is underway for 2 missing little boys. We'll tell you why the recent rains have officials concerned for the boys' safety.
And there's an emphasis on school bus safety this first week of school here in Virginia Beach. I'm Sella Kim, and I'll have a live report coming up.
In addition to the tropics, which we'll obviously take a closer look at, we're going to let you know about some clearing skies and then whether or not we see a return of more rain again tomorrow.
NASA has delayed the scheduled launch of Space Shuttle Atlantis once again, this time because of a problem with the fuel cell that's used to power the onboard computers. Shortly after midnight, workers powered them up and discovered irregularities in one of them. NASA decided to halt the countdown to give engineers more time to study the problem. They hope to launch the shuttle around noon tomorrow. The local news continues with the first week back to school and some changes taking place on the route to school. Bus drivers are being prepared for a new year after a difficult one last year.
Yeah, dozens of school bus accidents, including this one last October in Shicks Beach, plagued bus drivers across Hampton roads. Well, now drivers are getting a little extra safety training so that they and your children are safer on their drive to and from school. 13 News reporter Sella Kim is live in Virginia Beach with more on that for us. First off, though, Sella, we understand there was an accident just this afternoon.
Yes, there was an accident this afternoon here in Virginia Beach involving a school bus. It happened around 12:30 today. And it's interesting that it happens today on the first week of school and when the focus this week has been on safety.
It's the first week of school and already an accident involving a Virginia Beach school bus. It happened around 12:30 this afternoon here on South Independence and Salem. Police say the driver somehow became unconscious and ran off the roadway. No other cars were involved and there were no kids on the school bus. But last year, there were several accidents involving Virginia Beach school buses, including a number of high-profile ones. It has prompted special attention to safety this year. David Pace, Director of Transportation Services, says bus drivers went through some new courses before school began.
This summer we had a MANT training course, which is a non-physical intervention training for our school bus drivers, where they learn to verbally intervene in where altercations may be taking place on a bus.
But on this first week of school, there are other hurdles to overcome. Yesterday, for instance, buses were delayed. Pace blames it partly on the weather and partly on first week glitches.
By history, we know it. The first 3 or 4 days of school, it takes more time. And yes, buses are going to run late. The thunderstorm yesterday afternoon didn't help because we had buses delayed because of, the thunderstorms and not know if it was going to lightning. It was raining very heavily.
And another challenge that the school district had to deal with this year was the shortage of school bus drivers. In June, they were about 75 to 100 school bus drivers short. Pace says now all those positions have been filled, but they are still in need of substitutes. Live in Virginia Beach, Sella Kim, 13 News.
The city of Chesapeake is making sure drivers are careful around school zones. This morning, Chesapeake police officers are out to enforce school zone speed limits. They parked along Providence Road to get the message out about safe driving near schools. Police say their special operation will continue through this Friday as a reminder for drivers to take it slow.
But this evening, traffic very heavy around the downtown tunnel. An accident in the tube, well, it's just past the tube at the downtown tunnel, blocking traffic and making it back up all the way to Frederick Boulevard, also to City Hall. If you're headed out using the Midtown Tunnel, slight delays right now at London Boulevard and 26th Street. Let's look at another area that's kind of busy this evening because of an earlier accident in this area. 64 just between Chesapeake and Tidewater Drive. You can see traffic very, very slow and at a standstill practically. If you're headed out in this area, know that there will be delays. Benita Adams, 13 News.
Now, your 13 News Weather Lab forecast. Here's Chief Meteorologist Jeff Lawson.
Well, we tracked a lot of rain across the region today, not quite as heavy as yesterday. Still some downpours in a few locations. Luckily, no flooding issues to deal with. And now everything is moving out of Virginia and really much of northeast North Carolina, the exception being areas of the Outer Banks. Specifically, let's get in a little bit closer here around Kildeville Hills. Actually, just the southern tip there of Currituck County. If you're heading down 168 south of Olds, closer to Powell's Point, actually, and then over the bridge, you can see there a lot of the color starting to show up. A little bit brighter stuff from Sanderling and Duck up as you head north along Route 12 there, and more back down over the Albemarle Sound and close to the mainland. That's all drifting east. So if you live in Kitty Hawk, Kildeville Hills, Nags Head, you can certainly expect some scattered showers through the evening hours. Here's the rest of the forecast then. An evening shower or two, mainly for the Outer Banks. Otherwise, partly cloudy skies, southeast winds, and a sun that will be setting this evening at exactly 7:26. Temperatures by morning into the mid-60s. So setting everything into motion, here's what we see. Notice the moisture that was around. We saw a little bit of that action, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of some of the brighter colors that tried to move through. Still a couple of things popping up in center Virginia, and until those completely go away, I wouldn't discount a stray shower in a couple of other locations this evening. But overall, we're going to tend to look for clearing skies with the exception of the Outer Banks. And again, a slight risk maybe to the north and west a little bit later tonight. Temperatures right now where they've had a little more sunshine are in the 80s, a little closer to the coastline and with a wind coming in off the water, sort of a combination, helping to keep temperatures in the mid-70s, 75 on the south side and 76 right now on the peninsula. That's as high as we've seen today, 75 degrees, only 1/100th of an inch at the airport. Now, here's the central Atlantic. Here is Florence spinning around, a little bit closer look than what we were giving you earlier. Notice some of these just faint indications now of things starting to curl or what we call rain bands. That's a sign the storm is getting stronger. Here's a bigger view. A little bit of a cold front tried to interact earlier. Now that's heading off to the east toward the African coastline. Upper level low that was spinning around starting to dissipate. That's why the storm is now able to strengthen a little bit. We mention all the time, you know, you can go to WVEC.com. You can pick up not only radars, the forecast, but links to all sorts of hurricane information. Want to show you now every storm in September that has been in this location and what they have done over the past 150 years. Most of them, as you can see, end up curling out to sea. There was one, though, it's hard to read, 1906. Storm came in, made that turn just west of Bermuda like we have in the current forecast scenario, and then turned back in towards South Carolina. So most of the time, almost every time, they end up curving, but not always. 19.0 north, 51.4 west. Top winds of 50 miles per hour expected again to make that run. We know this for sure. It's going to head here south of Bermuda and then likely start to take the turn. I think it'll keep going that way, but we'll certainly have to keep an eye on it. It'll be a major storm. Right now you can see we are looking for a little bit of clearing to move in tonight, and then in the 7-day forecast, 78 tomorrow, slight chance of a shower, a slightly better chance, but still not a lot of rain Friday or Saturday with an isolated shower likely, and temperatures slowly getting back closer to normal. Don't forget, as I said, links to hurricane information always on WVEC.com.
Good to hear not a lot of rain, because we've already had a lot of rain.
6 months worth.
I think you're right. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Well, ahead on 13 News, a decision on accused terrorists being detained by the government.
Find out how their world is going to change thanks to some changes by the president.
It's been nearly 2 years since the Red Cross put out an emergency appeal for blood. They're doing it again, and here's why. The cupboard is nearly bare. I'm 13 News medical editor Catherine Barrett. What you can do to help.
This weather segment is brought to you by Dodge.
In tonight's 13 News Medical Report, an emergency call for blood donations.
The Red Cross says the blood supply is so low that hospitals in Hampton Roads may have to cancel all but emergency operations. 13 News medical editor Catherine Barrett joins us now with the story.
Well, let me tell you, a half-day supply. That's what we saw on the shelves today. The need is so critical, the Red Cross is rationing blood. Well, teenagers have a reputation of putting themselves first. Today we met a young lady at a blood donor center at Pembroke Mall who put the critical need for blood before her need to shop.
18 and a recent graduate of Princess Anne High School.
I am a first-timer.
Now a new line on her resume, blood donor.
I've heard on the radio a lot that people are in desperate need of blood and there's a lack of it, so I saw that there was a blood drive, so I decided to come in.
The Red Cross says levels of the universal blood type O, most often used in emergency situations, is right now at a less than half-day supply. One image shows the shortage. Refrigerators usually packed with pints of blood are empty on their lower shelves.
Our inventory, as you can tell, is dangerously low.
So low that bags of blood are being rationed to local hospitals. So low that cancer patients who need a blood component called platelets are on waiting lists. The Red Cross expected donations to dip over Labor Day weekend, but they didn't expect a heat wave followed by a tropical storm that kept donors away. Plus, the need is up.
We had in the last 10 days 3 patients in one evening that used 100 units of type O blood.
Since 1951, Rebecca Ulrich has been donating blood.
This is just something I've continued to do because I realize it's very important to a lot of people.
The Red Cross hopes that donors with long histories like Rebecca will heed the call again, and newcomers like Lauren will begin a new tradition now.
This evening, emergency blood drives continue until 7 o'clock at Pembroke Mall and the Red Cross Donation Center on West Mercury Boulevard in Newport News. The emergency appeal continues all week, and you can log on to my report on WVEC.com for a link to all those locations. Catherine Barrett, 13 News.
There's a lot more coming up for you on 13 News.
David Allen joins us with some of the stories that we're working on for you.
Coming up from the newsroom at 5:30, the search for 2 bank robbers shut down MacArthur Center. Tonight, the one-time suspects are free. Police say it was all a case of mistaken identity. And they risk their lives every day to save others. We'll show you the intense training Coast Guard rescue swimmers go through.
Real-time closed captioning of 13 News at 5, 5:30, and 6 is sponsored by Dodge. Grab life by the horns. Dodge.
Crews are on a frantic search tonight for 2 missing boys in the Piedmont area of North Carolina.
A 3-year-old and 4-year-old disappeared from a home near the Dan River yesterday afternoon. Search dogs were able to pick up a scent near a creek, but no evidence of the boys. There are extra concerns because area rivers are swollen from the recent storms.
Up next, a couple under investigation for a bank robbery is released by police.
David Allen and the 13 News team are standing by with that story and more right now on 13 News at 5:30.
New tonight at 5:30, surprising new information in that explosive